Freedom. It's a word that resonates deeply with every human being, conjuring images of limitless possibilities, independence, and the ability to shape one's own destiny. Yet as we delve deeper into the structure of our modern societies, we begin to notice a troubling pattern, a paradox hidden in plain sight. The freedom we cherish is often more of an illusion than reality, subtly constrained by invisible systems, societal norms, and the expectations imposed upon us from birth. From the moment we are born, we are taught how to think, how to behave, and even how to perceive what we believe is choice. We are told that freedom exists in the forms of elections, economic opportunities, and personal expression, but the truth is more complicated. Behind the facade of choice lies a network of rules, regulations, and psychological influences that shape our decisions long before we are consciously aware of them. Consider the world of consumerism, where the idea of freedom is sold to us daily through advertisements, social media, and endless product choices. At first glance, having countless options seems empowering, yet, with each decision, subtle manipulations guide us. Algorithms suggest what we buy, trends dictate what we wear, and peer pressure informs how we act. Our choices, though seemingly ours, are often pre-structured by forces designed to maintain the system. Even our sense of identity can be commodified, reduced to likes, follows, and clicks that reinforce conformity rather than true individuality. The question arises, if our every choice is influenced, guided, or even predicted, how much freedom do we truly possess? The illusion extends beyond consumerism. In modern democracies, the concept of political freedom is celebrated as a cornerstone of society. Citizens are encouraged to vote, to express opinions, and to participate in civic life. However, these freedoms often operate within strict parameters set by institutions that control the political narrative. Media, educational systems, and political parties shape public perception, dictating which ideas are acceptable and which are marginalized. While we may feel that our votes carry weight, the structure of power ensures that real change remains limited, often confining the freedom of citizens to a spectrum carefully managed by those in control. In essence, what appears to be a liberated society may in reality be a highly sophisticated system of subtle control. The concept of freedom also intersects with economics. Many believe that financial independence equates to liberation, yet most are caught in cycles of debt, work, and societal expectations that bind them in ways invisible to the naked eye. Careers, bills, mortgages, and social pressures compel us to conform, sacrificing time and autonomy in exchange for stability. Even when we achieve relative financial success, our actions are often constrained by laws, taxes, and the implicit demands of society. The pursuit of financial freedom, therefore, may be less a journey toward liberation and more a navigation through a labyrinth where the walls are invisible but omnipresent. Our personal relationships, too, are not free from constraints. Social norms dictate whom we date, marry, or befriend, while cultural and familial expectations shape our behavior and values. Love and friendship, though seemingly spontaneous, are influenced by societal structures that reward conformity and punish deviation. Even in rebellion, choices are guided by a framework designed to subtly reinforce the very system we might believe we are resisting. True autonomy, in such circumstances, becomes an internal struggle, a constant negotiation between our desires and the pressures of the world around us. Education is often heralded as the gateway to freedom, the key that unlocks the potential within each individual. Yet the system itself is structured in ways that subtly condition rather than liberate. From early childhood, students are taught to follow rules, memorize prescribed knowledge, and achieve success by predefined metrics. Critical thinking, creative exploration, and true self-expression are often secondary to conformity and compliance. In higher education, while the illusion of choice expands, the underlying structure continues to channel students toward careers, ideologies, and lifestyles that fit the needs of society and the economy. We are taught to believe that knowledge is empowerment, yet knowledge without autonomy can become another instrument of control. The more we are conditioned to accept a framework as natural or inevitable, the less freedom we actually experience. Media, both traditional and digital, amplifies this conditioning. News, entertainment, and social platforms constantly shape our perception of reality, often without us realizing it. Algorithms feed us information tailored to our preferences, keeping us in a feedback loop that reinforces our existing beliefs and biases. The narratives we consume subtly dictate what is important, what is trivial, and even what is morally acceptable. Through endless streams of curated content, our attention, the most precious resource of our consciousness, is manipulated to serve agendas that may not align with our personal values. Freedom, then, becomes a carefully manufactured illusion. We are free to think, but only within boundaries constructed by unseen forces. Even technology, which promises to increase autonomy, carries its own chains. Smartphones, social media, and constant connectivity create an environment where our decisions are monitored, predicted, and influenced. Notifications, likes, and shares drive behavior in ways that mimic control, all while giving the appearance of choice. Behavioral psychology is embedded in apps and platforms, designed to keep us engaged, often at the expense of our time, attention, and mental clarity. We believe we are acting freely, yet the forces guiding our actions operate silently, invisibly, and effectively. The more we rely on these systems, the less freedom we experience, paradoxically trading autonomy for convenience. The illusion of freedom also extends to law and order. Legal systems, designed to maintain fairness and justice, simultaneously impose boundaries on personal liberties. While these structures protect us from harm, they also enforce conformity and restrict behavior in ways that often go unquestioned. Citizens are free to act within the law, but the law itself is crafted by institutions that preserve power dynamics and social hierarchies. True freedom would mean the ability to act without coercion or manipulation, but in structured societies, every action is framed within pre-established rules, limiting the scope of autonomy. The invisible hand of authority ensures that freedom exists as a concept, yet rarely in its pure, unbounded form. Psychologically, freedom is not merely about the absence of external constraints. It is also about the internal barriers that shape our choices and limit our perception of possibility. Fear, for instance, is one of the most potent chains that bind the mind. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of scarcity, and even fear of the unknown all subtly guide our decisions. Many people convince themselves they are choosing freely, yet their actions are dictated by these invisible forces. Social conditioning amplifies this effect. From childhood, we internalize expectations about who we should be, what we should value, and how we should behave. These expectations become mental frameworks, so ingrained that we rarely recognize them as limitations. The society around us praises adherence to norms and punishes deviation, reinforcing the illusion that the choices we make are purely our own, even when they are heavily influenced by external pressures. Even our desires are not entirely autonomous. Marketing, cultural narratives, and peer influence shape what we think we want, often without our conscious awareness. We believe that pursuing these desires represents an expression of freedom, yet in reality, many of them are scripted by forces outside ourselves. For example, the products we buy, the careers we pursue, and even the relationships we seek are often predetermined by societal norms and cultural programming. True freedom requires the ability to distinguish between what we genuinely want and what we have been conditioned to desire. Without this clarity, our choices become rehearsed acts in a play written by others, and the illusion of freedom persists. Economic systems, too, play a central role in sustaining this illusion. While capitalism promotes the idea of individual agency and self-determination, it often binds people in cycles of work, debt, and consumption. The freedom to choose a job, purchase goods, or invest in personal growth exists, but only within constraints defined by the system. Many people are forced to prioritize survival, social status, or economic stability over authentic self-expression, believing they are exercising free will while being subtly guided by material necessity. Wealth and power magnify these dynamics. The more resources one has, the more real choices one can make, while the majority remain constrained by structural limitations disguised as freedom. Political narratives also shape the perception of liberty. Democracies celebrate voting and civic participation as hallmarks of freedom, yet the scope of real influence is often narrow. Policies, legislation, and even political discourse are controlled by powerful interests, meaning that the choices citizens make often reflect predetermined options rather than genuine autonomy. Civic engagement, while valuable, frequently serves to legitimize a system in which the parameters of choice are already established. The freedom we feel when we vote or protest is real in the emotional sense, but it is also carefully framed by structures that maintain existing power hierarchies. In other words, the illusion of freedom is reinforced by the very mechanisms that claim to deliver it. Technology, which many perceive as a liberating force, also plays a dual role in shaping the illusion of freedom. The digital world gives the impression of limitless choice, millions of videos to watch, endless products to buy, and countless people to connect with. Yet, algorithms meticulously guide our attention, subtly nudging us toward content that keeps us engaged, influencing our beliefs, behaviors, and even our emotional responses. Social media platforms, search engines, and recommendation systems operate on profit-driven motives, curating experiences to maximize engagement, not autonomy. The choices we think we are making are often pre-selected paths designed to keep us consuming, scrolling, and reacting, creating a sense of agency while quietly steering us in predictable directions. In this way, technology amplifies both the illusion and the constraints of modern freedom. Education, often seen as a vehicle for personal empowerment, can also perpetuate limitations. While formal schooling equips individuals with knowledge and skills, it frequently teaches conformity and compliance over independent thought. Curriculums are structured to produce workers, citizens, and consumers who fit the existing system rather than disrupt it. Critical thinking and creativity are frequently emphasized only when they do not threaten the established order. Even higher education, marketed as a gateway to freedom and opportunity, often results in a cycle of debt and dependence, binding students to economic obligations that influence their life choices long after graduation. In this context, education provides the tools to navigate the system, but it rarely dismantles the invisible barriers that restrict true autonomy. The illusion of freedom also manifests in our personal relationships. Social norms, familial expectations, and cultural pressures shape whom we love, how we express ourselves, and what kind of life we pursue with others. Often, the desire to belong and to be accepted overrides personal authenticity. Many people make life-altering decisions based on what they believe others expect of them, rather than what they genuinely want. While these decisions may appear voluntary, they are deeply influenced by subtle social coercion. True freedom in relationships requires not only the ability to act according to personal values, but also the courage to confront societal judgments, family expectations, and internalized fears. Without such courage, the freedom we experience in our most intimate connections is more imagined than real. Economic structures further complicate the notion of freedom. Many assume that earning a salary or running a business equates to independence, but financial systems often impose subtle constraints that limit true autonomy. Debt, taxes, inflation, and cost of living pressures create a framework where survival takes precedence over choice. Even those who appear wealthy may find themselves tethered to obligations, social expectations, or the fear of loss. The pursuit of financial security can consume time, energy, and creativity, leaving little room for the exploration of personal passions or unconventional paths. In this way, money, while seemingly empowering, often comes with invisible strings, making individuals dependent on systems they do not control. True economic freedom, therefore, requires not just resources, but the ability to act independently of structural pressures and societal demands. Politics, often touted as the arena of liberty, can also reinforce the illusion of freedom. Democratic processes give people the power to vote, express opinions, and influence governance, but the reality is more complex. Political systems are frequently dominated by entrenched interests, lobbying, and systemic inequalities that limit genuine choice. Media narratives, party loyalty, and public perception often constrain political discourse, steering citizens toward predefined options rather than true deliberation. Even when change seems possible, bureaucratic hurdles and institutional inertia slow or prevent meaningful reform. As a result, the freedom to participate in political life may exist in theory, but in practice, it is constrained by forces beyond the individual's control. This creates a paradox, the appearance of influence without the full reality of power. Cultural narratives and belief systems also shape how freedom is perceived. From a young age, people are taught stories about success, morality, and happiness that create invisible boundaries. Religion, ideology, and tradition can guide behavior and decision-making, often in ways that feel natural and unquestionable. While these systems provide structure and meaning, they can also limit personal exploration, critical questioning, and the pursuit of unconventional paths. People often internalize these narratives, believing they are making free choices, when in fact they are operating within a pre-established framework of expectations and norms. Recognizing these hidden influences is essential to understanding the true scope of one's autonomy. Technology, often celebrated as a liberating force, introduces another layer to the illusion of freedom. Digital platforms, social media, and smart devices promise convenience and connection, yet they frequently manipulate behavior and attention in ways that users barely perceive. Algorithms dictate what we see, hear, and consume, creating echo chambers that reinforce existing beliefs and limit exposure to alternative perspectives. Notifications, targeted ads, and constant connectivity create subtle dependencies, conditioning responses, and shaping priorities. Even as people believe they are choosing freely how to spend their time online, the platforms themselves guide decision-making, nudging behavior in directions designed to maximize engagement and profit. In this sense, the very tools that appear to expand freedom may actually tighten the invisible grip on thought, attention, and action. Education, another pillar of perceived liberty, often masks constraints beneath its structure. While knowledge empowers, formal education systems typically follow rigid curricula, promoting specific ways of thinking and defining success narrowly. Students are taught to memorize, follow instructions, and fit into pre-existing social and economic roles, rather than questioning assumptions or exploring alternative paths. Creativity and critical thinking may be encouraged, but only within boundaries deemed acceptable by institutions, cultural expectations, and the job market. As a result, even the pursuit of knowledge can inadvertently reinforce limitations on freedom, conditioning individuals to adopt prescribed frameworks instead of developing independent, critical perspectives. Social conditioning extends into the realm of personal relationships and emotional life. Societal norms define acceptable expressions of love, friendship, and family roles, subtly directing behaviors and limiting autonomy. Conformity pressures, fear of judgment, and the desire for acceptance often shape choices more powerfully than conscious reasoning. Even in intimate relationships, individuals may feel constrained by expectations, roles, and obligations, believing themselves to be free while their actions are guided by implicit rules learned over a lifetime. Emotional and social dependencies, whether on family, partners, or peer groups, can create invisible chains, making personal freedom as much about perception as it is about reality. Economic systems, often touted as providing opportunities and autonomy, also contribute to the illusion of freedom. While capitalism celebrates choice and entrepreneurship, the reality is that financial constraints dictate the range of options available to most individuals. Jobs, housing, healthcare, and education are often tied to income, leaving people dependent on structures they did not create. Debt, rent, and bills become invisible chains that limit genuine freedom, even as society promotes the narrative that anyone can rise to the top if they work hard enough. The promise of financial independence often masks systemic inequalities, making freedom appear attainable while keeping many tethered to survival obligations and societal expectations. Political freedom, one of the most celebrated aspects of modern society, is similarly layered with complexities that undermine its authenticity. Citizens may vote, speak, and protest, yet the systems in which they operate are constrained by laws, bureaucracy, and powerful interests. Policies are influenced by corporations, lobbyists, and entrenched political hierarchies, meaning that the choices people believe they have may be superficial or symbolic. Even in nations with democratic institutions, systemic barriers such as economic inequality, limited access to information, and media bias restrict the real agency of individuals, creating a carefully maintained illusion that they are fully free in shaping their governance and collective future. Cultural narratives and media messaging play a pivotal role in maintaining this illusion. Films, news, advertisements, and social commentary often celebrate independence, choice, and self-expression, subtly reinforcing the idea that freedom is an inherent right. Yet these narratives are curated, emphasizing certain values while marginalizing dissenting perspectives. The stories we consume shape our understanding of reality, what we consider acceptable, and how we define success or happiness. Consequently, freedom becomes a performance, a set of behaviors and appearances that conform to cultural expectations, rather than a true liberation of thought, action, and self-determination.